for joining us here in Leesburg for the House Democrats 2025 Issues Conference. I want to thank Chairman Pete Aguilar and Vice Chair Ted Lieu of the House Democratic Caucus for their leadership in convening this year's conference. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus and proud representative of New York's 9th District, which is in central and southwest Brooklyn. And I'm proud to be joined by all of my colleagues here from the Congressional Black Caucus and our members in attendance. I'll start over to my left with Shamari Figures of Alabama, Amelia Sykes of Ohio, Gwen Moore of Wisconsin, Gregory Meeks of New York, Chantel Brown of Ohio, Jennifer McClellan of Virginia, Chair Emeritus Stephen Horsford of Nevada, Congresswoman Robin Kelly of Illinois, Congressman, I'm drawing a blank right here. Troy Carter, see, this just doesn't, yes, Troy Carter of Louisiana, Marilyn Strickland of Washington State, Glenn Ivey of Maryland, Miss McIver, LaMonica McIver of New Jersey, and of course, Hank Johnson of Georgia. We have gathered today to discuss the state of Project 2025 America and the impact that Donald Trump's tariffs, taxes, and terminations are having on Black communities across our country. Instead of working to provide greater access to economic opportunity and lower the cost of living on day one as promised, President Trump's executive orders and economic policies are continuing to raise the cost of living, and our communities are disproportionately bearing the negative impacts of that. In recent weeks, President Trump's tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China have raised fears of an economic downturn, increased inflation, and an even greater global trade war. As we brace for the potential of a retaliatory trade war caused by Donald Trump, Americans are worried that they will see increased costs on groceries, gasoline, and other consumer goods, and unbearable financial strain on their families. Due to the persistent racial wealth gap and long-standing income inequality, Black Americans statistically spend the most as a percentage of income, and we can expect these tariff wars to have acute impacts on our communities. In a time when many in our communities are struggling to make ends meet, Donald Trump and Republicans put forward a budget to give big corporations and billionaires like Elon Musk a tax break while leaving everyone else behind. Nothing speaks more to the Trump administration's unwillingness to prioritize the needs of struggling families than giving breaks to the wealthy while taking away health care from everyday Americans. Instead of working to create economic opportunities that will allow Americans to get ahead, build generational wealth, and achieve the American dream, President Trump has been working to purge civil servants who he maligns as unelected bureaucrats from the federal government. The question is, who is really being impacted and targeted in these layoffs? Who are the unelected bureaucrats? Who, in Donald Trump's view, don't belong in our government? Well, 1 in 5 civil servants in the federal government are Black. For decades, federal jobs have provided a pathway to the middle class for many Black Americans in the face of discrimination in the private sector. The purge of civil servants in the federal government is an attack on Black people, Black families, Black jobs, and a blatant attempt to kick us out of the middle class. Donald Trump and Republicans have been unafraid to say the quiet part out loud. When they say that they're against DEI, they mean they're against diversity of thought, background, and lived experience. They are against equity for those who have historically been marginalized and kept out of opportunities. And they're against inclusive America that welcomes everyone to the table. Republicans reject these values despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of Americans believe that diversity initiatives in the federal government, on college campuses, and in the workplace are a good thing. We want to make clear Donald Trump's tariffs, taxes, and terminations are going to take our communities backwards. We will continue to call them out. We will continue to fight back in the Congress, in the courts, and in our communities until we defeat the Project 2025 agenda. Having said that, it's now my honor to bring to the podium the first vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Troy Carter of Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. As you can see from this assemblage, we aren't backing down. We've come to fight for the American people, and we aren't going to back down. We are here to protect the rule of law, to protect our Constitution, our rule of law, and our way of life as Americans. This is an all hands on deck. And as we are here in Virginia, we're prepared to travel back to Washington, D.C. to vote on a CR that will allow our country and our government to stay open. To be clear, this caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus and the Democratic Caucus, is prepared to leave here and go back to Washington and deal with whatever the Senate sends to us to demonstrate that we are prepared to keep America's lights on. We are prepared to defend and fight for our democracy, to fight for our rule of law, to protect the hundreds of thousands of federal employees who are being unilaterally toyed with as if this were an old school Etch-a-Sketch game, that you turn the two dials and when you mess up, you simply shake it up to start over. Mr. Musk, this is not a game. This is not an old school Etch-a-Sketch. These are people's lives. And Democrats are determined and will be the adults in the room to stand up for the American people, to challenge those who would attempt to reverse our gains and to reverse our democracy. It won't happen on our watch. Hashtag, we won't let them.
We will now hear from Representative Marilyn Strickland, who is the secretary of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want you to look at the group of people who are assembled here today. The Congressional Black Caucus now has 62 members, and we represent every part of the United States. We have among us the 2016 Teacher of the Year, Johanna Hayes. We have people from every part of the U.S., and I think this is important to note because as you look at the people we represent, what Donald Trump is doing right now is going to disproportionately affect our community. Those of you who are here for the early oppressor that I was part of, I'm going to say it again. Donald Trump does not care about the American people, nor does Elon Musk, the person to whom he has turned over the keys to the White House. He does not care if you get sick. He does not care if you get hurt. He does not care if you can't pay your bills. And he does not care if you're safe. And those things all disproportionately affect the African American community. So much so that in the last election, we showed up because we know the assignment, because we always know the assignment. Even if we don't get 100% of what we want, we know that voting for Democrats is a way to reduce harm and to make sure that we don't get the types of outcomes that we are witnessing right now. From the Veterans Administration, to the threat to Social Security, to saying they want to close the Department of Education. One of my colleagues mentioned earlier, it's hard not to feel like there is an attempt to kick us out of the middle class and to keep us out of the middle class. Not only is civil service a path to the middle class, serving in the military has been that path, and education has been that path. So as we look at the things that are happening right now, we stand here today, we stand with the House Democratic Caucus. We are not going to be bullied, we are not going to be afraid, because we are in fact the conscience of the Congress. We stand up for black people, and we stand up for America. At this time, I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Robin Kelly.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for joining us here today when we're speaking out, as you hear, loud and proud. I am Robin Kelly. I represent Illinois' 2nd Congressional District, and I'm chair of the Congressional Caucus Health Brain Trust. Just this past weekend, I was in Selma, Alabama, with many of my colleagues here. I walked in the footsteps of the 600-foot soldiers who fought for our voting rights, including our civil rights hero and late friend, Congressman John Lewis. As I crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, arm in arm with my colleagues, I was reminded of why we never give up, especially in challenging times. If they could stand what they stood, we can stand this and get past it. These are challenging times. The man in the White House has turned on his own American citizens. A man in the White House wants to purge black workers from the federal government, slash health care, and take away food from our children. I'm not just talking about Donald Trump, but I'm talking about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who makes $8 million a day from his federal government contracts, was never elected, never confirmed by the Senate, and his team of unqualified workers at DOJ had fired thousands of federal employees, not due to merit, but because he deemed these public servants expendable. And as you heard, 1 in 5 federal workers are black. And it's not lost on me that while Elon Musk fires qualified, dedicated, good workers, Trump blames diversity, equity, and inclusion for every tragedy that happens on his watch. An attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion is an attack on all of us. Trump only knows fear and division. He's a bully on the worldwide stage, attacking our closest allies with tariffs. Trump's tariffs are attacks on the American people. Mom and pop shops will suffer. There are many mom and pop small businesses. I come from a mom and pop small business family, and the average American family will see costs go up $1,600 to $2,000 per year for health care. Prices will rise faster than they did during the pandemic years, and we know how many black Americans suffered during the pandemic. This time, though, price costs won't be because of COVID. It will be because of Trump and an unelected billionaire he led into the Oval Office. As you know, costs of living are already too high, especially for health care and life-saving medicines. As chair of the CBC Health Brain Trust, I've worked for over a decade to close health disparities, especially for black mothers. We expanded Medicaid coverage from 60 days postpartum to a full year. Now Trump and House Republicans are trying to take away people's health care by cutting $880 billion from Medicaid. Medicaid covers 4 out of 10 births in the U.S. If they take away Medicaid, mothers and babies will die, especially black mothers and babies will die. In my district, which is 45% black, 300,000 people out of my 753,000 person district will be affected by Medicaid. And I know the CBC will be relentless. We will be fighters. And I just came from the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and as John Lewis says, this is a time to get into very good trouble. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce the Chairman Emeritus, Stephen Horsford.
Well, excuse me, good afternoon, and it's an honor to be here with all of my colleagues from the Congressional Black Caucus and our chairwoman, Yvette Clarke, and I also want to recognize the ranking members who are leading the fight as the leading Democrats, whether it's Representative Maxine Waters on financial services, Representative Gregory Meeks on foreign affairs, Representative Bobby Scott on education and labor, or Representative Benny Thompson from Homeland Security. Look, Donald Trump and Elon Musk and House Republicans have one objective: to screw America. And Black America is at the top of that list. Cutting $2 trillion on the backs of American people by cutting our health care, by defunding Social Security, by hurting our veterans, all to give a tax break to big business, to tech tycoons, and to billionaires, while adding $4 trillion of debt to make all of us carry the bag. So Trump's taxes, his tariffs, and his terminations are hurting all of America and disproportionately hurting Black America. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, we just had a hearing yesterday, in fact, where we uncovered their real objective. They say in one voice they want to protect Social Security. Meanwhile, they're closing down offices and laying off tens of thousands of people and eliminating the call center that our constituents use to receive their benefits that they paid into. When you talk about Medicaid, 42 million human beings who rely on Medicaid for their health coverage, including half of all children and more than a fourth of adults who are 65 years or older. In my home state of Nevada, we would be the third most impacted state based on the House Republican Screw America bill. In part because we did the right thing to expand coverage under the Affordable Care Act. And it's the Congressional Black Caucus, including Jim Clyburn and others, who were leading the charge to actually address the coverage gap. Because a lot of southern states, Republican governors, extreme legislatures didn't do the right thing, and those individuals are without their health care today. So there's one objective here by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Cut the budget by $2 trillion on the backs of the American people, including black Americans, add $4 trillion to the deficit, and give tax breaks to big business, to billionaires, and to tech tycoons. As the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, each of us out of the 62, we serve on every committee. We represent every region of this country. We have diversity of thought and diversity of opinion, but we're unified around one common goal, and that is to ensure that our communities are defended and protected against the worst of the policies. And House Republicans will be held accountable by the people. And that's really where I want to conclude. While we do our job, we're asking every member of the to help call out our Republican colleagues and to hold them accountable. It only takes 3 Republicans to break from the chaos and the cruelty of Donald Trump's taxes, tariffs, and terminations to join with a coalition of Democrats and to do the right thing to keep the fabric of this country together. That's what we're fighting for, and we're proud of our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who is leading our entire caucus towards that goal. And with that, I look forward to yielding now to another prominent member of the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Gwen Moore from the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you so very, very much, Stephen, and I am so glad to be here with the assembled press. We call this press conference on taxes, tariffs, and terminations to share with you what we think it will do to harm the black community. When you start talking about taxes, I guess Republicans would say that there are so many black people, they're part of the 49% that don't pay taxes at all. So what difference does it make what kind of tax policy we have? So many black people belong to the 25 percentile of our tax strata. Well, they have decided, the tax tycoons and the billionaires, multi-billionaires have decided that in order to fund the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, they would simply transfer that wealth from the programs, you've heard about them today, Medicaid, from housing programs, have Maxine Waters here to talk about the dearth of affordable housing in America. They would take monies away from that initiative. Education, the National Teacher of the Year. So many of our children are living in districts where the local property taxes don't support having a good, decent education, so the federal government is just going to pick up and move out and not protect, among things, disabilities and civil rights of students. The environmental protections.
they decided to just take that money and use it to subsidize oil and gas initiatives and our veterans. Who'd have thunk it? You couldn't have paid me to believe that they would take $23 billion away from our veterans, people who have served, died, paid the ultimate choice, the ultimate price in their families. You couldn't have paid me to believe that. And so also this idea that's been floating that they would just send people $5,000 checks with Trump's name on it, that they would give a tax relief through not paying taxes on Social Security benefits. Well, that really sounds good. And when you're a poor person, and if you're a poor person struggling to get in the middle class as a black person, that may sound good. Watch out. Because so many African Americans, the only source of retirement income they have is Social Security. And if we provide those trick benefits at this point, it would mean that we would increase the numbers of black people, especially black women, who would receive Social Security perhaps, but a benefit that is below the poverty level. You know, and as Stephen mentioned just yesterday, we saw that CR. You know, it takes like $600 million just to keep Social Security Administration funded at a level, and they cut it by another $100 million. They're closing down Social Security offices. President says he won't touch Social Security. What does Rachel Maddow say? Watch what they do, not what they say. Taxes, tariffs. Tariffs are a great tool to reinforce having a country thrive and grow and to create markets. But they have to be used strategically. I wouldn't use a hacksaw, a chainsaw to refinish my dining room table. And this is what they're doing. And I certainly wouldn't let my 6-year-old great-granddaughter use it. Let me just say, the tariffs that were kept in place from Donald Trump 1, Biden put some clothes on that. And we started building in Ohio. I'm very jealous. I sure wanted that money for chips. I mean, we invented chips in this country. We should be there was a manufacturing boom in this country when Joe Biden put some clothes around tariffs. These are just irresponsible tariffs. And the prices of food, you think they're high now, they're going to really escalate. And it's not going to help our black farmers to retaliate against the produce that we're getting from Mexico. And it was going to be increased prices on gas, food, building supplies, and that does not bode well for the black community. Taxes, tariffs, terminations. 14% of the American population are African Americans, but 18% of the federal jobs are held by African Americans. It's a form of great security and entrance into the middle class, if you've heard. You get security, job security. You get a pension when you're a member of the federal, an employee of the federal government. It's been and the post office that they're trying to disassemble. And so I am going to yield at this point because I have said enough. Everything's already been said, but I hadn't said it, so. But I'd be very happy as I close my comments talking about federal employees to someone who knows firsthand what this means, as she represents a district in Virginia, and that's Representative Jennifer McClellan.
Good afternoon. I am proud to stand here as the first black woman elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Virginia. And as a history maker, I know a little bit about history. Our representative democracy was born in Virginia over 400 years ago, as was American slavery. Virginia has been on the right side of history and on the wrong side of history. And the history of our country has been, how do we reconcile the ideals upon which we were founded, liberty and justice for all, with the reality of how we were founded, on the backs of our ancestors. Every time we have made progress towards that ideal, and every time black people have gained social, political, and economic power, there's a backlash. It involves propaganda, violence, and voter suppression. The first black men elected to Congress were the beneficiaries of that progress after the Civil War. There was a backlash that made sure another one wasn't elected until the mid-20th century. But we kept pushing. We kept pushing until the founders of this caucus were elected and created the CBC to be the conscience of the Congress. And there was a backlash. But we kept pushing. We're in the backlash now. We are in the backlash now, but we as the conscience of the Congress understand that the discrimination that our parents, in some cases our members, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents faced, the impact of over 300 years of slavery and Jim Crow did not go away with the magic wand when the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act passed. But the CBC, as the conscience of the Congress, has led the way to roll back the lingering impacts. We will fight today that backlash. We will fight efforts to dismantle the Department of Education that fights to ensure that every child gets access to the education that they deserve. We will fight efforts to decimate Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security that provides health care, a safety net, and pensions for our people and all of the American people. We will fight the backlash where the least qualified Secretary of Defense in American history can fire a decorated Air Force general with four-star general as chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because Pete Hegseth assumes the only reason he got that job was because he was black. We'll fight that. And we will fight to ensure that we continue that progress towards a government by, of, and for all the people, and not just the billionaires that Donald Trump wants to give a tax break to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. I did want to take an opportunity as the chairwoman to ask Congresswoman Maxine Waters, has been doing some extraordinary work in financial services, if you would say a few words on the impact.
I'll say a few words and then I'll be the one she wants.
That's all right. So I need you to say them. I need you.
We're counting on that. Take it to the max.
Well, first of all, let me just say that some of us just returned from Selma, Alabama, where we walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And our thoughts were with the civil rights leaders who were beaten within an inch of their lives as they got to the end of that bridge. We thought about our colleague John Lewis, who received brain damage even from that beating. And I thought about all of the work that black people have invested in this country to create a fair democracy. And I think about all of the work that we continue to do to strengthen the democracy and make sure that we fight for justice and equality for everyone. Never in our wildest dreams did we think we would have someone like Trump who would serve as someone serving as president of the United States for the second time would be out to literally destroy all of that. You have heard from the members today everything from the Department of Education to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to HUD to all of these agencies where we have fought to create opportunity. What is Trump all about? Why is he doing this? Now, we know he wants to be a dictator. We know he's in love with Putin. We know he even loves Kim Jong-un in North Korea. We know all of that. But what does he do in gathering all of this power? I think perhaps it is about gathering the power and bringing us to our knees so that when he changes America with his vision, that we will be begging for crumbs, basically, because that's all he will be offering. Now, all of that worries me, but I'm going to tell you what I'm worried about. We have great responsibilities continuing to fight for democracy and to strengthen democracy and to take care of the least of these, not only black people. We take care of everybody with our votes. I'm worried that Trump is on the edge of creating a civil war. He alluded to it more than once. He alluded to the fact that if he did not get reelected, that there could be a civil war. You know what responsibility that places on us? It places the responsibilities on us to live and do like Dr. Martin Luther King told us to do. He taught us to organize and to protest, but he taught us nonviolence. He taught us nonviolence. That was the center, that was the core of his message. And we live with that all the time. No matter how upset we can get, no matter how angry we can get, we live with what we've been taught. And now, this president is putting us in a position where hungry people are going to be on the street, where nonprofits who were waiting for their checks are not going to get them, where seniors waiting for their Social Security check will not get it, where poor families with children will not get what they believe the government has agreed to do. And so when that happens, what does Trump expect? Oh, I believe he expects violence. I believe he expects confrontation. I believe he's working toward a civil war. We're not going to get goaded. We're not going to get tricked into that. We're going to continue to do our work. We organize. We started the education by organizing and protesting. We went to the Treasury Department when Elon Musk broke in with his young people and took all of the records. That's our payment system. You don't get paid unless it goes through the Treasury. We went early in the morning at 19 degrees before the Department of Education, tried to get in. They had the security guard out there. Now, I had to think twice about what Martin Luther King taught because I was getting pissed. And, of course, they blocked the door. And then we went over when the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau organized and all of those employees were out there, and we protested. And we were at HUD. We were at HUD when they came down from work at 5 o'clock. They joined us. There were people who were there with tears in their eyes talking about and understanding what Section 8 is all about, what vouchers are all about. People being able to rent a place for their families to live despite the fact they don't have all of the money that they can earn. Many of them work every day, and many of them are getting these low wages, et cetera, et cetera. So, ladies and gentlemen, my message, along with all of my peers, all of my colleagues, is this. We're going to fight. We're in this fight. We're going to fight. We're going to peacefully protest. We're going to talk to our people. We're going to join hands with all of those who know now, who perhaps voted for Trump, that indeed they're having buyer's remorse. These are people in my district. The first organized protest in my district was on the white part of my district in Hawthorne, California. 3,000 to 4,000 people showed up. These were people, many of whom who had voted for Trump. These were people who were federal employees who were losing their jobs. And so we're going to lead it because our history tells us that's what we must do. Our foreparents died and sacrificed for all that was done to create civil rights. And we know we must do this. But we also know that now in addition to the leadership that we're going to provide for this country, there are going to be a lot of other people like us. Not look like us, maybe didn't even think like us, but now they know. They know they have a no good, low down, rotten, divisive president who will destroy this country in the name of power so that he can be, as he would like to be, a dictator or a king. Well, he's not going to get it because we're going to do what we've been taught to do. We're going to speak up. We are going to organize. We are going to create opportunities for people to be involved when we put the call out and say, join us in the protest. Join us in what we're doing and rallying. It's all about saving the entire country. It's about saving us from Trump and a non-elected billionaire who bought his way into the leadership of this country, and talking about putting $100 million more into the campaign of Trump. He's got the money, and he's been able to buy Trump, and Trump has let him go wild to do whatever he wants to do. When he goes into all of these departments, all of these agencies, it's not simply about firing the people. He's going to do that. But he's gathering all of the data, all of the information. Why are they doing this? I believe they're going to monetize it. They are brazen. If the president of the United States can take someone who's unelected, a billionaire who's bought into his campaign, and brazenly advertise his automobile on the lawn of the House of Representatives, or where was he? The White House. I mean, that's in your face. That is in your face. So he's going to get closer and closer in our face. And we're going to have to be real responsible. We're going to have to pray. We're going to have to ask God to help us remember what Martin Luther King told us. Don't ever let them goad you into violence, because we don't know what's waiting in the background for us if we're silly enough to do something like that. And so I'm here to tell you that this is what I believe could happen. And I'm here to tell you, you're looking at the most responsible people in the world who love this country, who's helped to make it stronger, and who are going to organize and work with people of all races and all colors in order to make this country what it could be and what it should be. That's enough of that.
Amen.
Thank you, Congresswoman Waters. I guess we'll, at this moment, open up for any questions that you may have. Okay, there's a gentleman, I saw him first.
Yes,
and if you would name your outlet.
Sure. Mark Meredith out of Fox in D.C. Obviously, that's a tough act to follow from Congressman Waters. Two questions based off of what she just said. Do all congressional Democrats believe that President Trump is pushing for a civil war?
I can't speak for everyone. I can, and certainly Ms. Waters made her position clear. Do I think he's, you know, let me say this. It is very clear that what Donald Trump is doing right now is violently impacting the communities that we represent. Whether that ultimately ends in a civil war remains to be seen.
Congressman Carter mentioned it's all hands on deck in your speech. I'm just curious, I asked this to the Hispanic Caucus this morning. Do you feel President Biden or Vice President Harris should be speaking up? Obviously, I know that they're no longer in power, but they would still be able to create a moment that would be a little bit different than just House or Senate lawmakers. Do you think that they should be speaking up?
Well, there's one president at a time. And these presidents, the vice president and the presidential candidate respects that. But they're still pivotal leaders in our community, in our world, and certainly in our country. And you will hear from them. You will hear from them in the vein of being supportive of the country that they love. But we recognize in our democracy that we're one president at a time. President Biden has been a fearless leader. And Vice President Kamala Harris has been a fearless leader. Their voices will continue to be heard, if only through us, but also through them and the actions that they have continued to undertake and will continue to undertake.
Can I make a comment? I did hear your question about the Civil War. I think what we're afraid of, as Representative Waters said, that we come up in the tradition of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we believe in nonviolence. I think we're afraid of the fact that the president has pardoned violent insurrectionists from January 6th. One of them was sitting in the cafeteria, the head of the Oath Keepers, and my staff was in the cafeteria terrified. There continue to be threats of legislators, Republicans, threatening them if they don't vote for Senate confirmation. I feel so sorry for Joni Ernst, who I couldn't imagine her, for example, voting for Pete Hegseth, but she was, she was given death threats if she didn't vote for him. And there continue to be threats if people don't follow along with his will. We see news organizations, bending the knee and paying out tremendous, amounts of money for lawsuits that wouldn't even have any merit in any other environment, but they're afraid of the retaliation from Donald Trump. So a big part of Donald Trump's leadership is to make everybody afraid, and black people are afraid too.
No. We really have to get on. There are quite a few people here with questions. Could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Jesus Garcia from La Opinión and the Diario en White. So my question is, in this same track that you are speaking of, like Donald Trump is assaulting the institutions of the United States. Do you think that institutions of the United States will last with this kind of behavior of the President of the United States, we haven't seen before?
Let me say this. Institutions are built by people. And as long as the people are focused on the strength and endurance of our democracy, the institutions will hold. What they will look like after what these folks have done will remain to be seen. But I'm of the thought that it'll be a reflection of those who fought to hold up this democracy and to advance it for future generations.
Your question is about the erosion and distrust in trusted institutions. And what I see Trump doing, where I see him doing so much damage, is in your profession. He told the Associated Press that they would not have access to the White House because they wouldn't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He's very selective about who he lets in and out of the White House because he wants to control the narrative. And so I think one request I have to you all, as people who study journalism and are practitioners of it, I know that there's a need to say we want a fair and balanced perspective. Giving equal time does not absolve you from telling the truth. Giving equal time does not absolve you from telling the truth. And if you care about this country, and you care about this profession, and the ability to do what we need to do to uphold democracy, your responsibility is to tell the truth.
Gregory Meeks, and Will.
So let me just say to that question, it's the responsibility of members of Congress. Our Republican members need to stand up, because if those institutions are at stake,